The mind is everything. What you think, you become. Buddha. Welcome, friend. Today, we're not just here to scroll past another inspirational quote or skim through a fleeting moment of motivation. No, we're here to pause, to reflect, to look inward. Because what we're about to explore isn't just positive thinking. It's not about forcing yourself to see the glass half full or pretending that everything is okay when it's not. What we're talking about is deeper than that. It's about changing the way you think, the entire framework through which you perceive the world, your life, and most importantly, yourself. This isn't a pep talk. It's not a motivational high that will fade by the end of the day. This is a philosophy, one that is grounded in ancient wisdom, sharpened by life's hardest lessons, and backed by modern psychology. This is about mental clarity, inner control, and the ability to take the steering wheel of your own mind. Most people live their entire lives never questioning their thought patterns. They don't realize that their mindset is not fixed, it's flexible. They don't realize that every belief they hold was planted at some point and can be uprooted. And they certainly don't realize that changing how you think, at the core, can change your entire reality. So today, I invite you on a journey into self-mastery. These are 7 powerful mental shifts, 7 ways to challenge your current mindset, break free from limitations, and start thinking in a way that aligns with the life you truly want to live. These shifts are not just abstract ideas. They are practices, habits of thought, that you can apply daily to elevate your mental state, reshape your perspective, and reclaim your power. But before we dive into these 7 transformative perspectives, take a moment. Before we continue, comment below. What part of today's affirmation, what you think, you become, resonated with you most deeply? Why do you think it struck a chord? Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you're serious about changing the way you think and showing up as your highest self every single day, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss your daily mental reset. This is just the beginning. Let's begin with the first shift and step into a new way of thinking. One that serves you, supports you, and sets you free. 1. Think in systems, not events. The map is not the territory. Alfred Korzybski. We've been conditioned, almost unconsciously, to see life as a chain of isolated events. A promotion, a breakup, a financial windfall, a sudden failure. Moments that appear out of nowhere, jolt us awake, and then pass just as quickly, leaving us wondering, why did that happen? But here's the truth. Events are not random. They are outcomes. They are the visible tip of an invisible iceberg. Beneath every outcome you experience, good or bad, there is a system, a hidden network of habits, beliefs, assumptions, incentives, and patterns that work together to produce that result over and over again. Let's unpack this. A system is not some complex machine only engineers talk about. It's simply the way things consistently work beneath the surface. It's your daily routine. It's how you manage your time. It's the way you think about challenges. It's the way you speak to yourself. It's the people you surround yourself with. The boundaries you keep or don't. The expectations you set. The choices you make without even realizing you're making them. The real power in life comes not from reacting to events, but from understanding and redesigning the systems that created them. For example, if you lost a job, the event might feel sudden. But was there a pattern in how you approached the role? A breakdown in communication? A long-ignored disconnection? If your relationship ended, was there a recurring dynamic, an unspoken need? A conflict that kept cycling back? If you experienced burnout, what system of overcommitment, Poor boundaries and perfectionism led you there. These aren't judgments, they're invitations, clues, signals. Because if you can trace the event back to the system, you can change it. This is what it means to think in systems. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin to ask deeper, more empowering questions. What pattern led to this? What invisible structure am I operating inside of? What feedback loop is repeating itself? What small, repeated actions are silently building my future? Am I looking at the tree in front of me, or am I seeing the entire forest? When you adopt this mindset, something powerful happens. You stop living life in reaction mode, constantly trying to manage fires and fix surface-level problems. Instead, you begin to design your life from the inside out. You become an architect of your own outcomes. You stop blaming isolated moments and start taking ownership of the underlying system. Because once you do that, you can change everything. Your energy, your results, your peace, your purpose. So here's the invitation. The next time something unexpected happens or something painful unfolds, pause. Don't just look at the event. Trace it back. Zoom out. See the system. Because to truly take control of your life, you don't need to regret your outcomes. You need to redesign your system. 2. Think in decades, not days. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10. Bill Gates. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Friedrich Nietzsche. We live in a world obsessed with immediacy, notifications, 2-day shipping, quick fixes, overnight results. It's no wonder most people feel constantly behind, because they're measuring their life in days, not decades. But the most successful, fulfilled, and grounded people, those who play the long game, understand something essential. Your true power isn't found in how fast you can move, but in what direction you're heading. Long-term thinking is a superpower in a culture addicted to speed. It changes how you show up, what you prioritize, and how you respond to setbacks. When your only frame of reference is today or this week, every failure feels devastating. Every delay feels like defeat. But when you expand your lens, when you ask, "Who do I want to be in 10 years?" everything starts to shift. That argument you're having, it becomes a lesson in communication, not a threat to your self-worth. That missed opportunity, it becomes a redirection, not a roadblock. That slow progress you're frustrated with, it becomes a necessary step in a much bigger arc of growth. Think of the great cathedrals of Europe. Some took centuries to build. Craftsmen began work on projects they would never live to see completed. But they still carved each stone with purpose. Why? Because they weren't building for today. They were building something that would outlast them. What if you approached your life like that? What if you treated each decision, each challenge, each sacrifice as a brick in a cathedral, an intentional part of a masterpiece that's still under construction? That's what long-term thinkers do. They don't crumble when things go wrong. They expect setbacks. They embrace detours. They understand that life, like any worthwhile creation, unfolds slowly and imperfectly. They play the infinite game. When you zoom out far enough, your current crisis becomes just a chapter, not the whole book. When you think in decades, your identity becomes stable, your priorities become clear, and your resilience becomes unshakable. This doesn't mean ignoring the present. In fact, long-term thinkers are deeply rooted in the present, but they live it with intention. Every action they take today is aligned with a future vision. Every decision serves a deeper why. This is what Nietzsche meant. When you have a clear why, a meaningful long-term purpose, you can endure the how, the hardships, the slow progress, the failures. Because those things stop feeling like threats. They start feeling like fuel. So pause right now and ask yourself, who do I want to become? Not in 30 days, but in 10 years. What kind of character do I want to build? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? What small decision today supports that future vision, even if no one else sees it yet? Because control doesn't come from speed. It comes from direction. And if you're walking in the right direction, you're already winning. Step by step, brick by brick. Before we continue once again, comment below. What part of today's affirmation, what do you think you become, resonated with you most deeply? Why do you think it struck a chord? Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you're serious about changing the way you think and showing up as your highest self every single day, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss your daily mental reset. 3. Think like a beginner. Always, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the experts, there are few. Shunryu Suzuki. There's a quiet strength in saying, I don't know. Not weakness, not ignorance. Strength, awareness, openness. But somewhere along the way, between school grades, job promotions, and the pressure to know what you're doing, we trade our curiosity for certainty. We stop asking questions and start defending our answers. We stop exploring and start clinging. We become, without realizing it, trapped by the illusion of being an expert. This is the death of growth. The beginner's mind, what the Zen tradition calls shoshin, is a posture of openness, humility, and wonder. It's the mindset of someone who sees the world not as a set of known rules, but as an unfolding mystery. Ego wants to be right, but control, real inner control, wants to be curious. The beginner doesn't pretend to know. The beginner listens more than they speak. The beginner sees options where others see dead ends. The beginner says, teach me, while the expert says, let me tell you. Let me tell you a quick story. A wise master once poured tea for a visiting scholar. The scholar had come to learn, but he kept interrupting the master with his own opinions and knowledge. As the master began pouring tea into the scholar's cup, he didn't stop, even when the cup was full. The tea spilled over the edge and began dripping onto the table. Stop, the scholar shouted. The cup is already full. The master gently smiled and said, exactly. You are like this cup, so full of your own opinions, there's no room for new wisdom. To learn, you must first empty your cup. This is what it means to think like a beginner, to empty your cup, to let go of the need to prove and embrace the desire to learn. When you live with a beginner's mind, you ask more questions, even the ones that seem obvious. You're not afraid to say, I don't know, because you trust that knowing is not the goal. Understanding is. You explore ideas without clinging to them. You approach life like it's your first day, not your 100th. This doesn't mean rejecting experience. On the contrary, it means using your experience without becoming confined by it. It means recognizing that past conclusions might not apply to present realities. To think differently is to stay eternally new. Not stale, not stuck, not attached, but fresh, alive, awake to the ever-changing present. So, here's your invitation. What do you think you know that might actually be limiting you? What conversation could you approach with more curiosity than judgment? Where in your life have you stopped learning because you think you've already arrived? The world is wide. Ideas are infinite. Growth is endless. Stay curious. Stay humble. Stay a beginner. Always. Think in choices, not circumstances. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. It's easy to feel trapped by life, trapped by obligations, trapped by our past, trapped by bills, relationships, jobs, or mistakes. The language we use reflects this mindset. I have to go to work. I have to take care of this. I have no choice. But here's the truth, quietly waiting beneath the surface. You are never without a choice. Your power doesn't come from perfect circumstances. It comes from recognizing that you are the chooser, even when the options are painful, even when the stakes are high, even when you feel powerless. You may not control what happens to you, but you always control how you relate to it. This is the radical insight that Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl discovered in the darkest place imaginable, a Nazi concentration camp. In the midst of starvation, torture, and the loss of his family, he realized there was one thing his captors could never take from him: his freedom to choose his response. That insight is the very heart of power. Not control over the world, but control over your response to it. When you shift from saying, I have to do this, to I choose to do this, something profound happens. You go from victim to actor, from passive to active, from reactive to intentional. Maybe you choose to go to work not because you're forced, but because you're committed to providing. Maybe you choose to end a relationship not because you're giving up, but because you value your peace. Maybe you choose to keep going, not because you aren't tired, but because your future matters more than your comfort. Even suffering contains choice. You can choose your frame. Is this a failure or is it feedback? You can choose your posture. Will I collapse or will I rise, even if trembling? You can choose your focus. What is lost, or what is still possible? Let's be honest. Some choices are deeply painful. Sometimes there are no easy options, only hard trade-offs. But acknowledging that you are choosing shifts the energy. You are no longer a prisoner of fate. You are a participant in your story. Every moment offers you a gap, a space between what happens and how you respond. That space is your freedom. That space is your power. So here's your challenge. Start catching yourself when you say, I have to. Pause and reframe. I choose to. Or, I'm willing to. Ask, what am I truly choosing here, and why? This subtle change in language is not semantics, it's sovereignty. Because when you stop living as if life is happening to you and start living as though you are actively shaping it, you reclaim the power that was always yours. Circumstances are real, but so is choice. And it's your choices, not your conditions, that shape your destined force by force. 5. Think with awareness, not autopilot. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Let's be honest, most of us are living on mental cruise control. We wake up, reach for our phones, scroll through the same apps, have the same thoughts, react the same way to stress, and go to sleep only to do it all again. Without realizing it, we're repeating the same patterns, day after day. We're not really thinking. We're just running scripts. We say we want change, but our minds are stuck in loops. Not because we're lazy or broken, but because the brain loves efficiency. It wants to automate everything, including your thoughts. And if you don't step in, if you don't interrupt that process, your mind will keep serving you the same recycled beliefs, assumptions, fears, and judgments, over and over. This is what Carl Jung meant when he said that the unconscious will run your life, and you'll just call it fate. You'll think, this is just the way I am. Bad things always happen to me. I could never do something like that. But those aren't truths, they're thoughts, and thoughts are not facts. The first step to taking control of your life is becoming aware of what's actually happening in your mind. You don't need to fight your thoughts. You don't need to believe them all. You don't even need to change them immediately. You just need to start observing them. This is the beginning of mental awareness. When a thought arises, pause. Watch it like a cloud drifting across the sky. Ask yourself, where did this come from? Is it mine? Or something I picked up from someone else? Is this thought helping me or hurting me? Would I teach this thought to someone I love? Who benefits from me believing this? You'll be surprised how many thoughts are rooted in old fear, insecurity, childhood conditioning, social pressure, or just habit. You may notice how often your inner voice is critical, doubtful, or defensive, without you even realizing it. But here's the powerful part. The moment you become aware, you are no longer controlled. You create space. You interrupt the autopilot. You become the witness, not the puppet. Awareness is freedom, because once you can see a thought, you can choose your relationship to it. You can challenge it. You can let it pass. You can replace it with something better. But it all starts with that quiet, powerful skill, paying attention. So try this. Throughout your day, stop and notice what you're thinking. Don't judge it. Just watch it. If you catch yourself in a loop, pause and name it. Ah, that's fear. Or, that's my perfectionism showing up again. Bring gentle awareness, not harsh correction. You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. And when you live with awareness instead of autopilot, you gain something most people never experience: choice, clarity, control. That is the beginning of a truly conscious life. 6. Think in principles, not preferences. A principle isn't a principle until it costs you something. Tim Keller. Preferences change with moods. Principles are your compass. Do you stand for honesty, even when lying would be easier? Do you hold to discipline, even when you're tired? Thinking differently means living by chosen values, not feelings, not trends, not the crowd. When your principles guide you, life becomes less chaotic and more aligned. You stop chasing approval. You start